Good evening. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Reading. We're part of a national organization, and we really work to encourage active participation in our political process. And we do that by helping people to be educated about voting, about who's running for office, and about encouraging people to register to vote. We are a nonpartisan organization, and we're just really interested in encouraging people to be educated voters and to get out to vote. So with that said, we have a couple handouts here at the back of the room, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Thanks.
All right, hi everyone, I'm Jess. First we want to thank the library for hosting us tonight. This is such a great opportunity to reach a broader audience than we would have been able to on our own. We're also very grateful to the League of Women Voters for co-sponsoring us and for all that they do to help us in our efforts to make people aware of upcoming elections and get people registered. A couple things before I jump in. In addition to the library posting this video on their YouTube channel, we're going to post the presentation on our website. We are going to ask you to please hold all of your questions till the end. We do have a lot of material to try and get through, and we want to make sure we can take questions from the audience, so that'll help us a lot if you can just wait for the Q&A at the end. And I also want to just be clear that even though a lot of the work we do and the procedures that we do are true across the state, tonight we are only talking about Reading. There are some small differences from town to town. For instance, we're a part-time office with one polling location, whereas obviously bigger towns and cities would have a bigger department and sometimes as many as 9 or 10 locations on election day. So even though a lot of this does apply across the state, tonight we really are just talking about Reading. So we want to start with introductions. Every town across the state, because we don't have county level government in Connecticut, every town has a registrar's office, and every office has 2 registrars, and one is always a Republican and one is always a Democrat. And that is a theme that you'll see throughout our presentation, because it's one of the checks and balances that is built into our procedures in the work that we do. So the Reading voters elected Michelle Meshi to be our Republican registrar, and she then appointed Janine Herman to be her deputy. Janine is here. Tina Dom couldn't be here tonight, but she is our assistant registrar for the Republican side of the team. And then we have Lisa Bartrow. She is our elected registrar for the Democrats. She appointed me, Jessica Cishek, to be her deputy, which is one of the best decisions she ever made. And we have Lila Davis as our special assistant registrar on the Democratic side. We also have Michelle Grandy from the town clerk's office. And she is a Democrat, but you'll notice on the ballot she's always cross-endorsed by both the Democrats and the Republicans, because we all know no one's doing this job better than Michelle. We've also asked Bill Pardee to join us tonight. He is one of our certified moderators here in town. We do have multiple people who are certified for that role, which is to say that they are the head election official on the election day. But Bill has been doing it since he was born. So we're really lucky to have his experience. He is unflappable. He knows everything that could possibly come up and how to deal with it. He's also one of our firefighters, so please be sure to thank him for all his service to our community. All right, if you're looking for us, you can find us on the town website. The website is townofreadingct.org, and from there you can put in /registrar-voters, or you can navigate by going to Departments and Services and then clicking on Register of Voters. That'll take you to our page, which has it all. We've worked very hard to try and put all the relevant information out there. Every time there's an election coming up, we update it with that information. You can also find us on Facebook. This is an easy way to be aware of some of those smaller elections that you might not otherwise be aware of, because it'll just pop up in your feed. So we currently have about 58 followers. Not really feeling the love, but that's okay. We keep doing what we do. So we hope you'll follow us on Facebook as well. All right, some facts about Reading, just to kind of set the stage. Our population here is a little under 9,000, but our number of registered voters is about 6,400 people. Of those voters, a little under 1,500 are registered as Republicans, a little over 2,500 are registered as Democrats, and then another large group of our voters are those who are unaffiliated. And I wanted to take this opportunity to point out the difference between unaffiliated and independent, because it's a question we get a lot. Unaffiliated means that you do not belong to any political party, whereas independent in Connecticut is a political party. So you see that's a smaller group. And then if you check my math, you'll see that that doesn't quite add up to the 64-17, and that's because there are some voters who fall into some of the smaller parties, Green, Libertarian, Working Families, etc. So as I mentioned, here in Reading, we have only one polling place. We used to have 2 districts. We're now down to just 1 district, 1 polling place. So it makes it nice and easy. All of our elections will always be held at the Reading Community Center, which is at 37 Lone Town Road, and it's behind the elementary school. So you're not in the wrong place, just keep going down that driveway. And the big elections, the small elections, as well as early voting, same-day registration will all be at that polling place at the Reading Community Center. All right, I wanted to talk about the laws that govern everything that we do in our office. And I brought a prop to kind of emphasize the heft of this, right? There's a lot of laws, and I really wanted to impress upon you that any hypothetical scenario that you can think of when it comes to voting or to election security, someone has already thought of that, right? There's a law for that. That's the tagline we'll go with here. There's a law for that. For example, I had someone ask about nursing homes. You know, what's to stop a nurse from filling out all those absentee ballots for their patients? There's a law for that. We could actually do a whole hour on that process alone. So just if you don't know the answer, don't assume there isn't one. You can look it up. This book is kind of meta because it's a book of laws, and one of the laws says that there has to be a book of the laws. It lives in the town clerk's office, but we recommend that you look it up online because this is a nightmare. When you go online, you can click through the topics and it'll jump you right to the part that you're looking for. It's not light reading, it's a lot of legalese. So the best way to get your questions answered is to ask us. And we really hope that the community will come, call us, email us, or submit a question through our website. It's called Ask the Registrars, the link there. I will say that's going to have the slowest response time, particularly right now. We're a little busy, got a lot going on at the moment, but we hope that you will reach out to us. Like I said, your questions have answers, and we are happy to explain it to you and help you look it up yourself if you want to and explain what all those terms mean. Oh, and I do want to be clear, the Title IX is the Connecticut state law versus federal Title IX, which is a whole different thing. So if you want to Google it, Connecticut state law, Title IX.
Thanks, Jess, for starting us off. I'm Michelle Meshi, and tonight I'm going to go over the duties and responsibilities that we have as Registrar of Voters. One of the things that Jess mentioned earlier, we are a bipartisan office. As you see, we try to really split it pretty evenly into part of the checks and balances. One thing we love saying as an office that we work with our neighbors. So like any healthy work environment, we don't discuss religion or politics. Here's the start of a list of our responsibilities. Everybody knows that we do elections. As we think about it, we maintain the voter rolls, and then there's a whole section of and more. Registrars, we administer elections 2 to 5 a year. How many do you think Reading will have completed this calendar year, including presidential election? How many do you think we have under our belt?
So far, 4. We'll complete 4, but we've had 3 so far.
Okay. We'll have 4 now, we'll complete 5. Because we had the May referendum, we had 2 primaries on the same day, which was the tricky one, a Republican and a Democrat primary for presidential primaries. We had a Republican congressional primary, and then we have a federal election that will make 5. Okay, understanding the voter rolls. Our voter rolls are comprised of 3 statuses. You all don't worry about it, we worry about it. So the first status is active. You come in, you can vote, no problem, everything's up to date. The next level or status is inactive. A voter who's moved from active to inactive status is because you didn't reply to our communication via mail, or the mail itself was returned to us as undeliverable by the United States Post Office, or if you haven't voted in a federal election in 4 years. A voter in inactive status can be restored to active and vote if they appear in person in polls and tell us, you're here still, nothing else has changed. Off, you've moved out of Reading and has also been confirmed by a voter in writing, you've passed away, or you've been in inactive status for 4 years. We work to maintain these voter rolls weekly, monthly, and yearly. Weekly, we process new registrations, updates, and changes, and those requests come in through the mail via the state's online application system that automatically goes into our centralized voter registration system, CVRS. We also get DMV registrations and updates that also automatically transmit into our system and moves within state and within the town. With every change, with whatever change we do, we must send a letter to the voter stating that change. And for every voter, there's a hard copy of the registration and any noted update. Hard copies must match the digital record in our computer system and vice versa. Monthly, we go through property transfers, death, and felony reports as another way to clean up our voter rolls. Monthly, we go through property transfers and it's data we get from our town clerk's office. We send a note to the new buyer to encourage them to register with a welcome letter. We also contact sellers via mail to verify that they've moved out of town. And if so, the seller then should return our letter with their wet signature, allowing us to remove them from the voter list. The death and felonies report data comes from the town clerk's office and Secretary of State, that's SOTS. Lists of Reading residents who've passed away or have been disenfranchised due to a felony conviction can also be reinstated, released, but are off the list. At month end, we always do what's called a change detail report. This is a triple check. We all take turns in the office of going through everything that's ever been touched on a voter's record for the entire month. Annually, we audit all the registration cards. Going in there, this is probably like the 5th check. We're looking at someone's cards throughout the year. We confirm all the hard copies of the registration cards in a safe. Like I said, we always have a paper hard copy backup to everything that's in system. So we confirm that all the information in both places is up to date and matches. We have 6,417 voters in Reading. So slow summer month, we're all going through that. Then the next thing that we do annually is we do a canvass of voters. Does anyone remember what a canvass letter looks like? It's that pink letter, pink piece of mail inside the envelope. Okay, so doing a canvass is one of the final ways that we try to clean up our voter rolls. An annual canvass is a way to identify voters who no longer live in Reading and contact them via mail to confirm their current address. And we use, in order to know who we contact, we use the data that we've collected throughout the years, usually those people that already haven't answered us and become inactive for a little bit. And then also check the NCOA, National Change of Address data, which comes from the United States Postal Service, and the ERIC report, which is called the Electronic Registration Information Center. About 22 states right now subscribe to the ERIC report. So all the states contribute their data. It comes from Social Security, DMV, their post offices as well as their registration offices. And then Connecticut purchases the pool data and provides it to the towns so we can use it and make some educated mailings. We will remove voters from the rolls once we've confirmed they've moved out of state. The and more page. We have continuing education and certifications that we all have to go through. We go to conferences for our Association Registrar of Voters of Connecticut, And long gone are the fun conferences, it's all work. Some good food, but all work. We come back excited each time, things we've learned, tips and tricks from other towns and whatnot, as well as sharing heartache sometimes. Freedom of Information Act requests we have to fulfill. We also recruit and train poll workers all year round, especially with this early voting, it's become another thing. New this year, because there are enough people now in this area of Meadow Ridge, we're doing supervised absentee balloting. You do it only in the areas of assisted living and long-term care residents, and only for federal elections. So we make sure they want to vote, they can vote, and we'll walk them from beginning to end and get that ballot cast with their town clerk. We also have voter education outreach. We visit Meadow Ridge. We do registration sessions there, Q&A and visits. We also gently harass some of my kids' friends at the high school. When they come through in the spring, we start looking for who's the senior, who's going to be 18 soon, to get them to register to vote. We also work to maintain our presence on the town's website. So it's our link in the town's website. We process petitions. We maintain and test equipment. We also maintain an election emergency plan, so voting never stops. Could be a slight pause, but it will never stop. And then we also work with records retention. All those hard copies, how long we're keeping them, and how we have to store them via Secretary of State's retention schedule. Okay, voter registration. Eligibility and identity is verified at the time of registration. Voter must provide a government-issued ID and attest to being a U.S. citizen under penalty of law. You are not registered until the Registrar of Voters, our office, accepts your registration by us doing the following. We enter you into CVRS, and then our office sends notification of acceptance through the mail to you. We're telling the voter, we accepted, this is your party, this is your address, here you go. If the mail comes back undeliverable, that person will be moved to inactive status. We can check in on you again, something's not right. You must also provide, when you're doing it online or on the voter registration card, your last 4 digits of your social security number or your Connecticut driver's license number. Okay. Because early voting is so new, this deadline is still here. This has always been here, so to speak. So it's not as scary as it looks, because you're going to have some more chances. But as of right now, we have this deadline of Friday, October 18th. This is the last day to mail in any applications. Last time up until almost midnight to do any online. And then you can appear in person, because we're going to be working all day long from 9 to 8 p.m. on Friday to register new voters. So new voters, this is someone who's come to town, someone who's become a citizen, someone who's become of age to vote.
Sorry, where else, like if I'm talking to somebody who lives in Danbury, where do they go? Or,
The state of Connecticut has all these deadlines.
okay, but where to go for the in-person?
It's going to be the registrar's office. The in-person, these are mandatory registrar office hours,
Okay.
so they would ask that.
Okay.
And with early voting, we're going to have another chance to register as a new person, which will come up in the future slides. Because it's a big election, we find that people will fill out registration cards and mail them back to us just to check to see if they're registered. Of course, we catch them every time, and we'll staple that card on to make sure, we see that they tried again, but they still are good to go. So we're pointing people more and more to our page on the town website, which has a link straight to the Secretary of State, where you can plug in your town, name, date of birth, and see if you're registered to vote. If you pop up, you are. If you're not, okay, then let's do the paperwork together. Also here is where you can check to see if you're already applied for absentee ballot, filled it out, and mailed it back to the town clerk. This will be the place you can figure out if they actually was received back by the town clerk. Lisa.
Right, so early voting. Early voting is new to Connecticut this year. We were one of only, I believe it was 5 states in the country that didn't offer it until this year. So, lots of changes for us and for our office and more time put into this. This past year, or this year, we've had early voting in the presidential preference primary, in the August congressional primary, and now we will have it in this election. So, what does that mean for this? So for our November 5th election, election day, we have 14 days of early voting that happens before. This starts on Monday. Every day, the hours are from 10 to 6, except for 2 days, the Tuesday and Thursday right before the election, that are 8 in the morning till 8 at night. So you have extended hours for people who may not be able to get there by 6 o'clock. All of our early voting happens at the Reading Community Center, and it's in the Heritage Room. So we have a special room set up for it. It's a little smaller location, you're not going to the gym. And we are also telling people who may have mobility issues, this is a much easier location for them to vote than if they have to go down to the gym. It's not as far to go for them. We do want to point out that there is no voting on Monday, November 4th. That's the day before the election, and we need that data to prepare. One other thing to note is that early voting ballots will not be actually counted and run through the machine until election day. So let's talk a little bit about the process. So when you come into the early voting room, you'll check in just like you do on an election day. We'll have the binder, our checkers will cross your name off. From there, we will have a computer with the Connecticut voter registration system pulled up, and we will mark you as getting a ballot. We will give you an envelope that has a pre-printed, or a sticker that we print out with your name and address, and you will get a pre-folded ballot. We'll direct you into the voting room. You will vote your ballot like you normally do, but this time, instead of feeding it into a tabulator, you'll fold it back up, you'll put it in that envelope, you will sign that envelope. It's an oath saying you are who you are and you have not voted anywhere else. You'll seal it up, and then you will put it in a ballot box. Do not leave the location with the ballot. It's an extension of our voting days. So once you are checked in, you are issued a ballot, you fill it out, you need to put it in the ballot box there. You may not mail it in, you may not take it home to think about it, you may not put it in the drop box at town hall. This is your chance to cast your ballot on early voting, and once you do it, you put it in the ballot box, you're done. You don't have to come back on election day. How do we keep these ballots secure? I know that's a question for a lot of people, and trust me, we have a process. So at the end of each day, somebody from our office who's a Republican, somebody who's a Democrat, we go together, we open the ballot box, we take out those envelopes for the day, we count them all, and then we put them in a bag that will have a seal with numbers on it, and we create an affidavit that has all the information, how many ballots we had, the date, we sign it, and then we will jointly take it over to Michelle, our town clerk, at the end of every day with that bag. She will then undo the seal on that bag, she will take them out, she will count them, and then she will look at our affidavit, she will sign it if she agrees with it, and we do our work, right? So she should agree with it. And then she will reseal it and keep it in her vault, in the safe. So it's fireproof. Every day will have its own container, so that at the end of the early voting period, she will have 14 containers for all the ballots. Something to note is that on election day, somebody from her office, most likely Michelle, will bring those ballots over to us. So she will also have an affidavit that day that says, I have X amount of ballots, here's per day, here's what they add up to. Give them to Michelle and I, we will count them and confirm. Then they will go to central counting for that portion of it. Okay. Something we also offer, because we want to make sure everybody can vote and give you as many opportunities as possible, is we have same-day registration. So if you noted, The cutoff day was October 18th. However, it's not really the cutoff day, because every day, if you are not registered, if you just moved to town, if you turned 18, if you forgot to do it up until then, you can come into the same day registration room, which is right next to the early voting room, and you can register to vote. We will have a process there whereby we will need to see your documentation, your same government issued ID. If you're new to town and your ID doesn't have your Reading address, we will require a piece of mail, a tax bill, or something that has your name and your Reading address on it. Then we will go into the system. We will make sure if you are coming from Weston that you didn't already go and vote in Weston before you came to us. And once you're cleared for that, you're registered in the system by us, we will give you a ballot. You can fill out the ballot, put it in an envelope. Again, you will sign an oath saying you are who you are, you did not vote anywhere else, and put it in the ballot box. And then our security in our system is the same as it is for early voting. Okay, the tabulator. I'm sure you guys have heard something recently that Connecticut is getting new tabulators next year. We're very excited for this, but it's not happening until next year. So I'm not really going to spend any time on it other than to say they're coming. Once we have them, we will definitely let the public know, and we will have a demonstration for you. Our tabulators and all of our election equipment are stored in a secure storage facility in town. We only have a few keys. We recently changed the lock just to make sure that nobody has the key that shouldn't have the key, just to be above board with everything. So it's in a room, it is climate controlled. I know some of the other towns had issues where tabulators melted because their storage facility got too hot. We don't have that problem. The machine itself, it is a scanner. It's an optical scan machine. All it does is count the bubbles that have been marked. It has memory cards that are programmed before every single election. So we figure out who the candidates are, that information is communicated with the Secretary of State and with the company who prints the ballots, and they give us memory cards that go into the machine. The machines do not work without those memory cards. The machine is made by AccuVote, and it is not, never has been, never will be connected to the internet. If you see something is plugged into the wall, it is not an internet cord, it is a power cord. And if for some reason the power goes off, we have backup batteries. We have regular maintenance that is done to the tabulators. This is required by law, and we just did this 2 weeks ago, so we are good to go. We own multiple tabulators in Reading, and we also have multiple backup batteries. Testing. Before every single election, we test to make sure that the tabulators are reading our ballots correctly. So our team, our office will make a test deck, we'll mark some ballots, we'll create a spreadsheet and say, okay, this is the number of votes that each candidate or each question should have. Then when we go do the testing, we run it through the machine to make sure that matches up. So the tabulator itself, once we do this, will print a tape. It looks like when you go to the store, it looks like a receipt. It'll have the date and time. It's this long, right, Bill? With all the different possibilities and candidates on there. And when Bill does it, he will read out each candidate. We'll look at the spreadsheet and compare. Once everybody agrees, then we will sign it, sign the tape. And I would also like to point out that we always announce ahead of time when this testing has happened. It's open to the public. Anybody can come witness it, anybody can ask questions and sign the tape if they have been there. Tabulator security. So the big thing is, how do you keep it safe and make sure that nobody has done anything to the tabulator? So after we do the testing, the tabulator is set for election day. In essence, we take out all of the data that was put in there for the testing and we do a zero tape. So it will show each candidate with 0 votes and it will run that zero tape, and we leave that in the tabulator. The memory card that's in there has a seal on it and a little numbered seal that we lock on it that is tamper resistant. You will know right away if somebody broke it. It's also put in a bag. That also has a seal with the number on it. So once we do all the zero tapes, we do all the seals, we put it away for election day, and then we have the tapes that we will put up on election day saying, here's the zero tape, here's another one for town clerk for our paperwork. But everything is in view of the public, so if anybody wants to see that, it's there. After the testing is complete and the tabulator has been set for election day, we make sure that everything is in that serialized tamper-evident tag for the bag, for the memory card. All of those numbers are recorded on all the paperwork. And when we do this testing, we all have to sign it and make sure we have that right. Then on election day, the moderator, Bill, will look at that paperwork. He will look at all of those seals on everything and make sure they're the same ones, so that nobody came in, did anything with the machines and put it back with a new tag. Okay, so we just want to acknowledge a couple people who make our elections work. Besides our office, besides town clerk, we have the moderator. As I said, it's the chief election official. This has been Bill. Do want to point out that he's certified, so there are classes that go into this. I think Bill could teach the class, but there are classes. Their main job is to address any issues that happen on election day. So anybody has a question, anybody wants to understand about the tabulator, we will direct them to Bill. He is the impartial person who's in charge of our election. He's also the only person who has keys to the tabulator and to the ballot box on that day. But every time he wants to open up the ballot box, let's say we had so many people vote, we need to empty that, then we would have a member from both parties go with him to witness it. Everything is always done in public view and in a bipartisan manner. We also want to talk about the fact that we have really amazing poll workers. We have some of them here tonight, which we love, and we cannot run our elections without them. They have a wealth of knowledge, they have a wealth of knowledge of the community and their people. They're your neighbors, they're our neighbors. We also encourage young people to become poll workers. We recruit from the high school. Happy to say that on both weekends of early voting, we have some high schoolers working. So I just want to acknowledge them because they are very, very important to making sure that our elections work. Now I'll have Michelle Grandy come talk about the absentee ballot process.
Hi, everybody. We are in absentee ballot hell at the moment. Sorry, but. So if anybody hasn't voted by absentee ballot, who don't understand the process, it's kind of a tedious process. You have to have a reason. You have to fill out an application. You can file your application online. You can send it through the portal. You can print out an application. You can email a federal postcard to us, but then send us the original. There's all kinds of options for applying for that. As of today, we've issued 524 absentee ballots through my office. 32 of them are federal ballots, which means people who are not registered in town, but at one time in their life lived in Reading. This was their last residence before they moved out of the country. So they get a ballot for federal only. They get an email ballot and they can print it off, and those all have to be hand counted, along with any email ballots of students or people who are working overseas but are still registered voters. I think I've sent out about 30 of those. Again, these are all going to have to be hand counted, sorry, at the polls. If you were to come in and apply in person, I can give you your ballot at the same time. You would apply, and then I would give you this organized mess. So you get your ballot, and you get an inner envelope, which you have to sign and date. That's the affidavit that one of the registrars was talking about. You get your instructions, and then you put your ballot in this envelope, and you have to put it in this envelope, and this has all your voter information on it. This is what you hand back to me or put in the ballot box. And then they are sealed until election day, as are the EV ballots. They're separated from the absentee ballots. The difference between the absentee ballots and the EV ballots is once you voted, early voting, you've cast your ballot at the polls there, you cannot retrieve that. You can't change your mind. You can't say, my candidate dropped out. You don't get another vote. That's your voting day. Absentee ballot, on the other hand, if you think you're going to be out of town or you're traveling or whatever, you cannot get to the polls. You complete your absentee ballot, you return it to me. You find out you're going to be here on election day, or you change your mind, which we don't encourage. But you find you're here on election day and you want to go and vote in person, you have to return that absentee ballot to my office by 10 a.m. on the day of the election. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to go to the polls. So we would avoid that. So the registrar said we have all these checks and balances through our CBRS system. And I will say kudos to the registrars. They're doing an amazing job. And it's such a pleasure to work with all of you. I think that's all I have for absentees. Thank you.
Hi, me again. So a reminder that after the 14 days of early voting, there's no voting on November 4th, but then election day is Tuesday, November 5th, from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you are in line at 8 p.m., you will be permitted to vote, so stay in line. Not that Reading's that busy.
Yes, excuse me, I'm sorry, I meant to say that before. On November 4th, there's no early voting, but you can still vote by absentee ballot on November 4th.
Yes, good.
In my office, in person.
See Michelle. She'll sort you out. All right, and again, our polling place is the community center. Voter identification, you always have to present ID when you come to the polls. True story, I sent my husband back to the car to go get his ID. We will ask everyone, even if we know you, when our first selectman comes to vote, she always brings her ID. When Michelle comes to vote, she always brings her ID. We do require it. When voters come in, we ask them to state their name and address aloud when they are at the check-in table. Now, if you have your ID, the process is going to be very straightforward. If you really didn't have it for some reason, the dog ate your ID right as you were walking out the door, and it's almost 8 o'clock. But when you get to the check-in table, they are going to send you over to us, the registrars, and then there's a different process. At that point, you can complete what we call a Form 3. And basically, you have to fill out all your information, give us the name of your firstborn, just kidding. And then you are going to sign a statement that says that you understand the penalties if you are attempting to commit voter fraud. And once that is signed, then you can cast a ballot. But like I said, it's a different process that requires more paperwork. When you come in to vote, we're going to mark you as voted, and this is one of our checks and balances. So our voter list is an actual physical list that we print from the system. We put it in a binder, the checkers have it in front of you. When you present your ID, they're going to put a line through your name on that voter list, so they're going to cross you off. And that holds true for any method of voting. So if you vote early, you vote through same-day registration, or through absentee ballot, your name is going to be crossed off. So if someone were to vote during early voting and then attempt to vote again on election day, we would see that your name has already been crossed off. And we are going to write down your information and make a note of that because you should not be trying to vote twice. A little bit about, you may see it in the news, the election coming up is a little contentious, just a smidge. So we are going to have a police presence at the community center on election day. And we will also, Michelle has requested a police presence for all those ballots that she's holding in her vault. She has to bring them over to the community center on election day, so she's going to have a police escort for that process as well. So you don't have to worry about anybody tampering with the election. We've got backup, we've got a plan. As I said, if someone attempts to vote a second time or anything happens that is irregular, we will be observing and making notes throughout the day. We'll write down the who's and the what's and the when's, and we would be passing that information on to the State Elections Enforcement Commission. This is a bipartisan, independent commission that ensures the integrity of our elections. They're essentially the voting cops, if you will. Any information that we pass on to them, hey, you know, we think this looked a little not quite right, they're going to do an investigation. If they find that there is something there, they're going to pass that information on to the Attorney General, who can then prosecute a case for voter fraud. We also, the election team, are subject to penalties if we were to get up to some shenanigans. But frankly, if we were going to try and pull something, we wouldn't be telling you this. So hopefully you understand that the whole point of tonight is to be transparent and that you know you can trust us. This is the language that comes directly from my good friend, the law, about what happens if you attempt voter fraud. And this is legalese, but basically it says if you're up to something you shouldn't be, you're going to be subject to fines, imprisonment, and disenfranchisement, which is a big word for saying you lose your vote. You don't get to participate in our elections after that. If you attempt to take on somebody else's identity to vote, same thing. Fines, prison time, disenfranchisement. Also, if you attempt to bribe someone else to vote a certain way, or to not vote at all, hey, I'll pay you just to stay home and sit on your couch, that is illegal. And again, you would be subject to penalties. This one has an even heftier fine, $5,000 or up to 5 years in imprisonment. And these funny codes here are how you find stuff in here. So again, we recommend doing it online because then you can actually click on the links and it'll jump you right to this section of the law. All right, just a recap of the early voting dates and times, because as Lisa said, it is new. We're going to start on Monday the 21st, and then it's going to go every day. And most of those days are going to be 10 to 6, except for the 29th and the 31st. On those days, we have extended early voting hours, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Goes through the weekends. The last day of early voting is Sunday the 3rd, and then no voting on the 4th, because we need a day to set up the polling place and get everything ready for election day. And then election day is November 5th. The polls open at 6 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. If you want to find this information on our website, quick way to get there is through the QR code. This is also all of our contact information and where to find us. You can take a picture of this if you'd like. And at this time, we're going to start taking questions. The whole team's going to help me answer, but I'm actually going to kick it off because we actually had someone use our Ask the Registrars link. We got a couple of questions online. So the first one, they didn't leave their name and email, so we want to make sure we address it tonight. They said that they're uncomfortable with security cameras filming their vote. So we want to make it clear that there are no cameras in the voting booth area. So the private area where only voters are in that area to cast their ballots, there are no cameras pointing at you in that space. So I'm not quite sure where they got that impression, but I can assure you that is not happening. The other question we had online was about a letter that Reading residents received, and I believe that they're talking about that canvas letter that Michelle talked about, where we sent the whole town a pink letter, and we did want you to respond to that. You're supposed to cut off the bottom, fill in the information, sign it, and send it back to us. So if you did not complete that process, you can go on our website and click on the check your registration link. That'll take you directly to the Secretary of State's website where you can check and confirm that you are registered, or you can reach out to us. Again, our phone number and email are here, so we're happy to help you verify that. Okay, questions? Sure.
I have a few. Okay, so is the November 4th no voting across the state of Connecticut or only for Reading? Across the state of Connecticut?
Yes.
Okay.
The dates and times are true for every town. The only thing that's different is the polling place.
Okay. I'm asking because I'm doing some get out the vote canvassing.
Terrific.
Telling people about early voting, so it's great to hear the security protocols because a lot of the people, especially in Danbury, who might not, you know, this might be their first time or they're concerned about it, they want to know more detail about early voting. So it's really helpful to hear that there are several security protocols in place. Okay, so November 4th across the state of Connecticut. What are the benefits of early voting?
So I always, sorry, you're welcome. Sometimes you gotta stop me. I always think back to when my kids were little and I was working full-time and I had a 45-minute commute. And I'm not a morning person, and with 2 little kids, there was no way I was getting there before work. So I always made a plan. Voting is important to me. So I always made sure I was gonna leave work as early as I could, get the kids from daycare, and get back home. And it would be dark by the time I got here, but I would get here. But if I had got a flat tire on my way home, I probably wouldn't have made it by 8 o'clock. So now that we have the early voting, you don't have to worry about whatever life is gonna throw at you at the last minute. So if you wake up feeling sick on election day, oh, good thing I took care of it last week, or really just anything like that. And
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said before, mobility issues could be a reason that people don't want to navigate, such a crowded environment on election day. I think you have some 18-year-olds who go to high school, who are in school all day, and then they have after-school activities, and they're, it's like they have 2 weekends now that they can go and vote. So I think it's just a matter of opening it up to people who may have a hard time with being there on election day.
Also, there's a ballot measure for electronic voting, I think, on.
there's something about absentee ballots,
Okay.
amending the Constitution. It's a yes/no question, right?
Benefits of early voting, save registration.
Can I just clarify that? It's called no excuse absentee balloting. And again, it's another way in terms of making sure that people are able to vote and have access to voting. So Michelle gave this very great presentation on how to get an absentee ballot, and you have to have a reason. This, what you're voting yes or no is so you can apply for an absentee ballot without a reason. You don't have to say, I'm sick, I'll be out of town. Yeah. So it's sort of, it mirrors what happened during the pandemic, because they took away the requirement that you had to have an excuse. The majority of the states you can do this already. So this just is another way to provide access to voting.
Thank you. Same-day registration only on November 5th or any day of early voting?
Every day of early voting.
Every day of early voting, awesome. Okay,
So the schedule looks exactly the same as the voting schedule for same-day registration.
okay.
And in Reading, it's the room right next door to where early voting happens.
Yeah, in case it wasn't clear, like Lisa said, early voting's upstairs, but on election day on the 5th, we'll be downstairs in the gym of the community center. So that's the only difference. There'll be plenty of signs. You won't get lost.
All right. Testing is open. If there's a third party, this is just for my own interest. If there's a third party candidate on the federal ballot, will there be an observer, or is it always just the 2 majors? Like if we had a Green Party candidate or something, there'd be like you have a Republican and a Democrat sort of watch it, present at various points in the voting process, right?
Yeah, Connecticut just
Acknowledges.
the 2 major parties. So there are other candidates from other parties on this ballot right now.
Yeah, I'm just
So, but yeah, no, it isn't a requirement. And you can have an unaffiliated person in the registrar's office, but it's preferable to have the 2 major parties represented.
Of course.
And I just, in case I understood your question, Connecticut doesn't have poll watchers, if that's what you're asking? We don't have that.
No, it was
because we have
really just.
unaffiliated-
Another one of us.
Oh, okay,
comes
okay.
As a
Yeah,
all right, sorry.
Yeah,
You got it.
I was just curious about that. My daughter, who's 13 and deeply invested in this election, she's been getting out the vote and all kinds of stuff with me, wants to know when exactly do the ballots get counted on November 5th? Is it a continuous thing, or does it all happen at the same time? That's.
The early voting ballots that we get back from the town clerk and the absentee ballots get counted all through the day as they come in. Absentee ballots can come in until 8 o'clock at night, so we could still be putting them through. We have a central counting location, so we're keeping track of all chains of custody and planning of when we're going to start trying to tackle the huge pile that Michelle has put out. The actual count of election day ballots have been put in the tabulator, 8 p.m. It's when the tabulator tape is run to show us all the counts. Throughout the day, as you put your ballot in, there is a little display. You can see what number of ballot your vote happened to be on. But that's about it as far as knowing. We won't know until after 8 o'clock.
Okay, my last question, I promise. Curing ballots. Curing about, like when there's like when Al Gore ran and they had the hanging Chad thing and like you have people have to go in and sort of look at specific ballots that might have some kind of an error and been miscounted. How does that work?
So that's,
It's
the
the
audit.
over cameras.
Yeah, so it's the audit. So if there are any problematic races or towns, or it's too close to, like it's within 1%, isn't it?
It depends on the race.
Okay, so
Yeah,
then
close
the
vote
Secretary of
count,
State
we
will let us know that we have to do an audit, which means we would have to bring poll workers back in, we would have a day, right, Bill?
Yep.
And then we would recount all the ballots and see if there are any issues. And I believe you work in teams.
It's a whole different procedure, it's called a recanvass, it's a whole other procedure where the ballots are evaluated to see if they're marked properly. Ones that are marked properly go through the scanners, ones that are not marked properly are looked at by 2 people to determine the voter's intent, and everything's done that way. But that's only if the margin of error is within, such a small amount. Yeah, that's determined by the state. I'm sure it's in the Connecticut General Statutes.
I am crossing every finger I have that we don't have to do that.
Some of the state races where they've been extremely close, like 200 vote or less difference. So that's why I'm always curious to understand how that process works.
So with the state races, that would be across the state. So we wouldn't necessarily have a recanvass in Reading, even if it was close vote, because it's an overall vote when it's a state race.
Right. Thank you.
Have you noticed any difference from this year as opposed to years past about I know that you said that there was going to be a police presence, but in terms of getting volunteers to work or people in your community, if you've noticed, are you concerned more so?
I feel like we were concerned that people wouldn't want to work, but we have really dedicated poll workers and we have really done a lot, like for our emergency plan, to dealing with the police presence, like we have really made a concerted effort to make sure that people feel comfortable working. And honestly, I've never had more people volunteer to be poll workers as this election. I've had to turn people away. So even our tried and true who thought they would get several days work in early voting, I was like, I have to let some of these new people work. So it's a really great problem to have,
Right.
because we want to encourage people to be a part of the process. I think we're more mindful of all the possibilities and scenarios that could play out, and we have been thinking about that.
And the state has provided a lot of training on everything you could think of.
Just one more question on same-day registration. So you've explained it will be available right at the polling place. Is it also available at the town clerk's office?
No. Because when you do same-day registration, you actually vote in that room. So you register and you fill out your ballot and put it in the ballot box there.
Is that a change from,
No, my office never did that.
your office has never did it, so I was misinformed.
I can take a voter registration card when people are registering if the registrars aren't in. But
That's
for
the
same-day registration,
Same-day
my
registration.
office has never had involved, that's definitely.
Thank you.
But keep in mind though, in years past, it was election day registration and it was only on the day of the election.
Right.
Now that we have early voting, it's a little bit different scenario because we have all the days of early voting plus election day.
Thank you.
Elaine, did we have anything in the?
No questions from the Zoom audience.
All right, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.